Happy Halloween to all our viewers and subscribers. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your support, as at the time of writing this video we have just surpassed 100 subscribers and are nearing 10,000 channel views, so honestly thank you all so much. Since this is Halloween, we thought we would create a video on the history of the holiday itself. Let's begin. It is widely believed that what we now know as Halloween originated as a Celtic festival dating back at least 2,000 years, known as Samhain, and this ancient celebration marked the end of the harvest season on October 31st. Pagans believed it to be a day of overlap between the living and the dead, a thinning of the veil separating our two worlds. The deceased, they feared, would wreak havoc on their crops and spread sickness if not properly appeased or warded off. Fearing the spirits, people wore masks and costumes to disguise their humanity and attempt to confuse the malicious spirits. The festival would often involve bonfires, as it was believed that the fires attracted insects, which would in turn attract bats to the area. This was thought to entice the bats to remain in the area constantly, controlling the insect population to minimize damage to crops. In 609 AD, a Christian holiday emerged named All Saints' Day, also known as All Hallows' Day, which was set for celebration in order to honor the year's dead and the community's ancestors. And the night before, the traditional night of Samhain in Celtic tradition, became known as All Hallows' Eve. As far back as the 15th century, among members of the Christian faith there had been a custom of sharing soul cakes at All Hallows. People would visit houses bearing soul cakes either as representatives of the dead or in return for praying for their own souls. Later, people went from parish to parish begging for soul cakes by singing under the residents' windows. This marks the foreshadowing of one of Halloween's best-known traditions, trick or treat. The wearing of costumes at All Hallows has been noted as early as the 16th century in Scotland and was later recorded in other parts of Britain and Ireland. There are many references to guising at Halloween in Britain and Ireland during the 18th century and the early 19th century. In parts of Southern Ireland, one 19th century English writer described parties of children dressed up in fantastic costume went around the farmhouses and cottages singing a song and begging for cakes, apples, money, or anything that the goodwives would give them. By the 1700s, many of the beloved traditions of the modern world started to crop up. Costumed people celebrating Samhain went door to door singing songs in exchange for food. They often played pranks to imitate evil spirits and used carved turnips as lanterns. The word Halloween begins to emerge and dates back to around 1745, being a contraction of hallowed evening or holy evening. The practice of dressing in costume at Halloween in North America is first recorded in 1911, where a newspaper in Kingston, Ontario reported the children going guising around the neighborhood, and this has since evolved into what we now know as commonplace as part of Halloween customs. In the second half of the 19th century, America underwent a boom in immigration. These European immigrants, especially the millions of Irish fleeing Ireland's potato famine of 1846, helped to popularize the celebration of Halloween nationally. Taking from Irish and English traditions, Americans began to dress up in costumes and go house to house asking for food or money, a practice that eventually became today's trick-or-treat tradition. In the late 1800s, there was a move in America to mold Halloween into a holiday more about community and neighborly get-togethers than about ghosts and witchcraft. At the turn of the century, Halloween parties for both children and adults became the most common way to celebrate the day. Parties focused on games, food of the season, and festive costumes. Parents were encouraged by newspapers and community leaders to take anything frightening or grotesque out of Halloween celebrations. Because of these efforts, Halloween lost most of its superstitious and religious overtones by the beginning of the 20th century. By the 1920s and 1930s, Halloween had become a secular but community-centered holiday, with parades and town-wide parties as the featured entertainment. Despite the best efforts of many schools and communities, vandalism began to plague Halloween celebrations in many communities during this time. By the 1950s, town leaders had successfully limited vandalism, and Halloween had evolved into a holiday directed mainly at the young. Trick-or-treating became a tradition focused mainly on children, and was a relatively inexpensive way for an entire community to share in the Halloween celebration. In theory, families could also prevent tricks being played on them by providing the neighborhood children with small treats. A new American tradition was born, and it has continued to grow up to today, where Americans spend an estimated $6 billion annually on Halloween, making it the country's second largest commercial holiday. So that was our brief history of Halloween. We hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned something new about the holiday. If so, please remember to like and subscribe, as it will allow the channel to grow and develop, as well as continue to provide interesting content more regularly. Check back next time for our video on top 5 tragic deaths on film sets. Until next time.